Hello, I'm ShieldWar100 and welcome to another one of my quick critiques. This time I'm looking at the latest delivered Knight models from, I think it was the June release actually now. The Penguin release is what I'm going to be going with, and yeah, we'll be taking a look at the build quality, the models, and a quick look at the rules too for this batch. Okay, so let's take a quick look at our first contestant. And here he is. I like to think of this guy as the main event of the month's releases. This is the Emperor Penguin Unchained version. The Emperor Penguin has been released before in the old first edition of all things. He's a new 52 character from my recollection. He kind of usurps Penguin's throne in Penguin's organisation of all things. Gets him thrown in prison too, I think, and basically takes over. This is him in his Unchained version. He's actually Ignatius Ogilvy is his real name, and he takes a cocktail, I think, of like some of Man-Bat's serum mixed with some other things to turn into this like massive hulking brute we see here. But he's also a very clever chap himself as well, quite cunning. But let's have a look at his model, shall we? So yes, a particularly suitably dynamic pose, really like him, on a nice bigger base too to suit his stature. Let's have a quick look at the sculpt quality. Really good, in my opinion. I hope you agree when you see it. If I just get it to zoom properly. And a quick turnaround. No filling required at all. Something that I'll be mentioning throughout, I think, is that the plugs they've got for the arms and legs on these models, where necessary, are really good. They've really worked on them for this month's releases, and yeah, they're sound, and they go in really well. Lovely detail on the face there as well. Yeah, looking forward to painting this guy. Yeah, scenic base with its own little base topper there as well, which is really nice. Suits the model pretty well, and it gets rid of that sort of ugly slot that you're left with. Yeah. Okay, let's have a quick look at his rules. So he is, as explained just before, he's a leader rank for the Penguin faction alone, so this is the only time you'll be taking him as an alternative to ordinary Penguin, Oswald Cobblepot. 120 points, so he's not a cheap alternative. I think he weighs in higher than all the other Penguins actually. So yeah, he's going to require you to really sort of shake up your thinking around the force. Although the Penguin faction does have good access to really cheap henchmen anyway, so not too bad in that respect. But look at these stats. Willpower 7's kind of average, but endurance 9 is that puts him above most other leaders, most Batmen in fact. I think only endurance 8, so you know, attack 5 still Batman levels, defense 4 not too great for someone about 120 points, but he's got the offensive capability to match it out. You know, the strength and the movement and the special stats are fairly ordinary for a leader, although 3+ is nothing to be sniffed at. This guy is certainly tougher than your average guy, your average leader, especially now you're factoring in all the guys like Two-Face and all the organised crime bosses now in the modern mix. So you know, this Emperor Penguin is a tough cookie in those respects, definitely. It's just I have too long probably thinking about Banes and Batmans and Deathstrokes myself, to be honest, who's not really a fair comparison for anyone. His chain is his only close combat weapon in terms of having a stat, and it's a paltry point of blunt damage, and the only thing you really got it there is the reach. You know, he uses it in the comic to strangle Batman a bit, and yeah, the fact so that's why it's in there, and it gives him a reach attack in case he needs it, in case you're really wanting to do you know, you can't quite get into base contact perhaps, but you still want to do something. But yeah, let's go through his straights now. Brawler's a new one on me. I think every hit he takes he gains a defense counter, which is potentially handy. I wouldn't base a strategy around it at all, but every time Emperor Penguin gets hit, he gets a defense counter, which will help him the next time he gets attacked. So that's pretty damned useful. Is it that? I'm just yes it is, sorry, just gotta make sure before I was talking rubbish. Claws is actually what you really use in close combat. It means that his unarmed attacks do 1 blood 1 stun, which is the dreaded split damage which everyone seems to revile so much, but I think is now getting slightly more use these days because there's a lot more henchmen and such who have a difference between their willpower and their endurance now, so you're likely to tick up to one before the other now rather than both at the same time. Dirty money is what he gets is what Emperor Penguin gets instead of Lord of Business, means he can take $300 worth of extra guns, so not quite the organisational prowess that Penguin would have been showing. Doesn't get the 500 for Lord of Business, but still pretty useful. This guy's still got he's still got most of the Penguin's empire behind him. Fight Me is kind of like a reverse bodyguard, I think, if memory serves. Where is it? Here we go. Yeah, if a friendly model within 4 inches of his model and line of sight suffers a number of hits, this chap can make an effort and take those hits for him. So, you factor that in with the brawler skill, you could pile up a bunch of defensive bonuses for Emperor Penguin for future, but you just got to bear in mind that he will go down eventually, same as anyone else, and he doesn't have much else in terms of defensive until we get a little bit further on. But nonetheless, it's very situational. I wouldn't just throw that in all the time to protect all of my henchmen, but if you've got someone you need there to be scoring an objective or something, then this could be really useful. Master Fighter's a good one. Is that the +1 to hit or the reroll? Sorry, my bad for not remembering. Yes, +1 to hit when he's fighting unarmed. So there you go. Attack 5 with Master Fighter, giving him +1 to hit with each of those dice. He's an offensive powerhouse, definitely. Now Provoke is you force an opponent to take a willpower roll, and if they face it, they can only attack this model. It's pretty useful. Again, situational, depends upon what they've got, but you could really disjoint an opponent's plans if they really need to attack one of your henchmen. You can force them to have to come towards this guy instead. Scheming 2, bloody useful. The ability to move suspect markers is really amazingly good. I mean, including your opponents as well. Regeneration means he gets to get rid of an extra point of damage each turn. Potentially really good. There's only 4 turns in the game, so that's only 4 points of damage overall you'll be getting rid of maximum, absolutely maximum. So it could be useful, but don't bank on it. It's just a hand. It's kind of nice. And tough skin means he's a little bit more resilient against strength rolls. So again, it's good, but don't have him hang around in front of Two-Face's crew of Tommy guns. It won't do him that much good in the long run. An Underworld King. This is. If you look at this on the back here, this big wall of text, you have to ignore that because that is a misprint. It's actually, for some reason, that's basically, if you remember my Penguin Crew game, which I put on my channel, so let's actually have something to look at while I talked about this. If you remember the Penguin Crew game I had on my channel, I showed you with all the bank of 4 cards that he gets to use. It's that rule, basically. So Emperor Penguin gets that the same as the normal Penguin does. For some reason, they used the old 2nd edition version of that rule on the back of his card, which is kind of a bad thing. And Knight models, if you do see this, just please put the current version up, please, pretty please. It would be really useful and would make me look less stupid, okay? And I'd appreciate that. So there you go. That's Emperor Penguin. And yeah, do I think he's worthwhile to have in your collection? If you're serious about playing as Penguin, then definitely, because if you've got a Penguin already, an Oswald Cobblepot version, taking this guy basically changes up the way your crew works, because you're no longer trying to protect this tiny dwarf in the middle of your ranks. You've actually got a different play style for the benefit of having one model. I mean, I think that's pretty useful. Pretty good. Pretty decent. I mean, if you look at organised crime and you look at their variety of leaders, the actual variety in terms of playstyle doesn't massively change from one to the next. But with Penguin, this guy is a completely different take on how you then build and then use your crew in the game. So overall, if you've got if you like the model and you're thinking about it, I don't see why you wouldn't take the plunge. Okay, well that's Emperor Penguin. Let's move on. And our next model is in now. We're going to depart from the Penguin theme this time to go to the Legends of the Dark Knight release for this month. This is Signal Man, who I have never heard of before, despite owning a few comic books. Not this one. No, this is definitely an eraser for me, rather than a Killer Moth, who I do know. But yeah, okay, Signal Man. Here we go. Nice model. Yeah, definitely a guy who wears his underpants on the outside of his tights, as you can see in the time-honoured tradition. So he looks kind of like a superhero, but he is a bad guy. So there you are. He is standing on the bat signal, which I presume is significant, and it's a fairly well modelled bat signal. It's very similar to other ones they've done for other models who interact with it. So yeah, I like the fact they're keeping consistent. He has what looks like the hand of a big old clock. So I'm going to assume this ties into a comic book arc he was in once upon a time. And yeah, there you go. You can see him. He's pretty good. Again, no real filling required, although I do actually need to trim that up. Naughty me. We'll have to get on that. Sorry, that cloak needs a bit of trimming. I must have missed that. But yeah, it's definitely a sound model with no real filling required, and yeah, definitely an accurate representation for the model that is on the front there, even down to his tidy whities at the front there. Let's have a look at his rules. Oh, excuse me. So interesting. This guy is a henchman, who works for anyone who isn't the Batman crew. So this guy can be taken in just about any of your crews. So there you go, for 44 points. So not an insignificant henchman cost. So he's kind of like you're looking at comparing him, if you want point for point, to the Soldiers of Fortune. Really, 100 points, $100 worth of your funding. It's not really going to break the bank, is it? And his stats are pretty good. I mean, 6 willpower and 7 endurance for a henchman. Not bad. Bearing in mind that henchmen usually do so much for scoring objectives. His stats as well, 4 and 4 for attack and defense at 44 points. That's a really cheap 4 attack, 4 defense model there, and he's not slow either. Movement 10's kind of average these days, so he's not going to be left behind in the dirt either. So his stats are not too bad. Again, and he, bear in mind, being a henchman, he can be inspired by your bosses. So yeah, I think you get some good use out of those alone. But let's move on. His weaponry is his knockout gas, which is double spun. It uses the expensive, like the flamer template, if you imagine that, from 40k. So it's one use only, mechanical gas, which is a rule that rarely comes up and only really means that anyone with a gas mask won't be affected by it, but that's very few people. And blunt 3 in case you get that magical critical hit, so don't move and shoot it, basically. So you make sure you're using a strength die instead of an attack die when you use it. But yeah, 2 points of stun. It's kind of useful if your opponent has been dumb enough to line himself up nicely and cluster around, but it would also serve as a great disincentive for him to do so. So that might help, and it's just its existence might help for doing that. You might foil your opponent's plans by doing that. And the miniature flares, for 1 point of blood damage, he fires a few of them. Short range, mechanical again for the 3-up strength die, and sets people on fire automatically. Not critical fire, sets people on fire. Potentially superly useful against people who shoot guns and whatnot, forces them to move and things, but short range may not come in. These are kind of both very situational weapons, but you could get good use, potentially really useful. So into the stats, criminal's just a keyword, which actually does tie in with quite a few of the bosses in the organised crime crew, I think. And so this guy could you get some extra out of him depending on which boss you take. Full equip means he can't take any more equipment, so you can't give him anything from your crew's purchasable war gear. Don't forget he's a henchman, so it would normally count. Goad's really useful. Potentially opponent might end up having to move if you can force him to do, if you can get him to fail a willpower test, you can force him to move. Potentially good. And reinforced gloves for that double stun on the close combat. That makes this guy into even more of a boxer. He's not like indestructible, but yeah, he's not going to go toe to toe with a Batman or even a Nightwing, but yeah, he can safely beat up other henchmen quite soundly. So I'm liking this guy, really. It's just a shame I don't know much about him. And finally, the electromatic control device is a special action. Right, let me read this out. And then we'll get through to working out what that means together, shall we? So, place an event marker within 4 inches. Fair enough. You can place within 4 inches enemy models that are within 4 inches of that marker when it's placed. In addition, all enemy models that stays within 4 inches of that marker during its activation suffers enervating 2. Remove the marker at the start of the recount phase. So, yeah, I think Google Translate might have actually just exploded whilst they tried to translate this one. But yeah, I think from my understanding and looking at things on the Discord and stuff, right? You put down event marker within 4 inches. We've all established that, right? Enemy models within 4 inches of that event marker, you can then place 4 inches within somewhere else within 4 inches. I think. And in addition, when it's the opponent's turn, if he actually leaves his models within 4 inches of that event marker, they get enervating 2, which basically screws their effort limit up next time they try and use it. So basically, it's you can put down something which moves your opponents around 4 inches. There you go, simple as that. That's bloody good. Potentially. Yeah, you could just move a bunch of people into line of sight as snipers, all sorts of things. So again, lots of uses for this guy. He doesn't specifically tie in with any suspect play that I can really think of. He doesn't have scheming or hacking or anything like that. But no, this guy, sound choice, 44 rep. Kind of sits in that awkward points value that he doesn't. You won't usually have 44 handy points left at the end of your building your crew, but he's certainly worth it. And if I ever see him, I'll actually know. If I see him in a comic, I'll be like, it's him. Finally, I have some context. Brilliant. But yeah, you could certainly do worse. I wouldn't blame you for not taking him. He does. He might not match the aesthetic that you're going for with your crew, but if you're not bothered about that and you want a solid choice to beat people up, set them on fire, and then move your opponents, you could certainly do worse than this guy. Right. Well, the next pack we're going to do is a blister of the Penguin Crew reinforcements. It's kind of an interesting one. This definitely fits in with the biker gang aesthetic. They went from the Arkham Knight crew they did for him all the way back in first edition. So the Street Demons, a well-established Gotham biker gang and criminal network really from the comics and onwards and onwards. I think it was only in Arkham Knight they explicitly started working for Penguin, that video game. Otherwise they usually kind of independents on their own if you just need some random mooks roaming the streets. But yeah, they work for Penguin in this, and that's fine by me. It's a biker gang, and these are biker dudes. They're a biker gang. They're bikie men from the bikie gang. Yeah, anyway, never mind. Some of you that reference will make sense to, others of you it won't. Sorry, I'll start up now. Right, so we've got 2 models, and yeah, we've got a big guy with a axe and a shield, which is uncharacteristic for Gotham, but also a biker. So yes, first of all, we'll start with the biker. Why not? Here we are. So this is the only model in the actual batch today that actually needed some serious remodeling because of a piece which was missing. There was as you can see, the green stuff, I had to green stuff the handle back on this bike because it had actually not cast properly. Boo! But fortunately, even I am able to do a simple tube, so yay! Otherwise, everything lovely, no problem there. Let's see if I can get the embossed biker gang symbol for the Street Demons on the back there. It's really nice, and yeah, it's a bike. This is a guy shooting a gun. You can't go there. There are actually 2 other Street Demons bikers, I think, which fit in the Penguin's umbrella. And I don't have those, so this is my only biker so far. So maybe one day I'll have to try and procure those bikers to actually have the full gang. But yeah, I think he's a lovely model, and hopefully that is an anomaly with the old handlebar there. If you do get it, or if you've got him on the way and you find it also to be there, trust me, it really wasn't a difficult fix, but do have to deduct points for when things do go wrong. I've got to be fair. Right, let's move on to the other chap. This was a much easier build, super easy. It's just him and a couple of arms really, and yeah, he's got his stop sign, shield, and his axe, which he's holding kind of the wrong way round a little bit, but hey, I used to play confrontation. Holding axes that way round is relatively normal for me. And right, so yeah, he's a big guy. This kind of goes in with the Penguin left, the lieutenants being bigger chaps. Every gang used to have a really big guy in it, so it was like a thug, henchman thug who was big, and this is the current version, shall we say. And yeah, super detail, really nice, and can't fault this model whatsoever. So let's have a look at their stats. Right, so start with the biker again. Both these guys are henchmen, of course, as you'd expect. So Penguin Henchman, 32 rep, and yeah, so you go Street Demons Biker 3, just to emphasise that he does fit in with the others. $300 because he's holding the handgun. I'll just go to that. So it's a custom automatic gun. It's basically exactly the same automatic gun stats you'll see on all the other models with hand pistols that fire like that, except it's got the red dot. So one miss can be re-rolled. So there you go, split damage gun. So you make of that what you will, but I like split damage a little bit more now than I used to. So yeah, he's got your average, really average stats for a henchman these days at this sort of points cost. Yeah, 3 attack, 3 defense. He's not going to be doing too much, but he is fast on his bike. As you can see, he's always on the move, which let's see. Oh yeah, it means he can do his attack action in the middle of his movement action. Bloody useful. It makes sense on the bike. Mechanical mount is the one that gives him the +4 inches to his movement distance, so he'll be moving 14 minimum, but he can't jump or climb, which is fair enough, being on a motorbike and all. Anyway, so he's also got, let's see, he's also got fast there, gives him an extra 2 inches, so he's moving 16 inches, sorry, my bad. Mobster ties him in with the rest of the Penguin crew, so he gets benefits based around all of that, all of the things that that Penguin does for peak models with Mobster. Greed means that he can't gain objective points for causing damage to opponents, basically. So he can't score cards where the scoring condition revolves around removing enemy models. I think he can only really do it around delivering objectives and whatnot. So there you go. There's a bit of a hint on how you use this guy. Instinctive shooting allows him to move and shoot without losing the 2 dice. So really good. But I think yes, it's a special action. So again, to get the best use out of this guy, you need to give him audacity, and that on a henchman is kind of a bit of a tricky one. You won't always be looking to give all your henchmen audacity all the time, but that said, Penguin does have ways of giving his henchmen extra actions, so yeah, we'll see. But yeah, and the biker jackets is a bit of rubbishy armor, I think. What's it do? Oh yeah, no, the sharp weapon trait doesn't affect him. It's kind of very, he won't get. It's a lucky bonus you get to use that, but that's him. And Street Demons 4. So this, yes, just again hammering home the point that this guy ties in with a previous release. He goes with the ones in the old Penguin Arkham Knight set. There you go. Although you can use him with any Penguin crew, of course. 29 points. So he's a bit of a cheap guy to take for this. He's not a big. You don't expect a big, solid, heavy hitter for 29 points, despite the size of the model. The size of the model might actually factor into meaning that this guy gets a bit more attention than he'd otherwise be due. But yeah, again, his stats are nothing massive to write home about, very average all across the board, but the axe is nothing to be sniffed at. Double blood, you got to be careful when you see that coming around, and it's handy as well, so he's re-rolling misses, and the heavy means that his strength die is increased up to 3 or more. So yeah, you can't ignore this guy, but you won't be worrying about him unless you're another henchman yourself. But the shield gives him protective, which allows him to re-roll failed defense rolls, which is annoyingly surprisingly good. Okay, so yeah, biker jack again, meaning he ignores sharp. Bluff is where you can automatically reduce your opponent's attack value by 1, but it's a special action which requires you really to be giving this guy, using special actions with this guy, which implies either audacity or having to use extra actions from the Penguin's rules. Hardened is bloody good, so hardened with the protective from the shield could actually conspire to make this guy last a lot longer than he's useful, than he should do, has any right to, shall we say, because what hardened does is it means every time you take a batch of damage, you can swap the type of damage from stunned damage to blood damage, or from blood damage to stun, whichever way around you want. Just 1 point of that, and that can make all the difference between staying conscious or even staying alive, and yeah, pretty useful stuff. So overall, these two figures are a really useful addition, if you ask me, to the aspiring penguin player. Gives you a couple of relatively cheap henchmen which come in around about 61 points between them, so not going to break the bank. If you're short on money, you know, physical real life cash money, so I could understand you not going for these ones. I mean, the back boxes generally come with everything you need anyway, but for a bit of variation, if you've got the cash to splurge, a biker's useful to have, because movement 16 is really handy in a traditionally quite a slow crew, and yeah, a big chap always makes your crew look more threatening than it may actually be. Right, let's move on to the last box set today. And here they are, Penguin's Associates, as a little extra supplementary box. Not a bat box in its own right, certainly, but not just a blister of reinforcements either. This is kind of new for Knight models and their releases, I think. But these guys are Penguin's Associates from the New 52 arc, I believe, where Penguin was heavily involved, and he got himself some low-level meta-humans to help in the running of his empire. I think. I don't own this one, but that was the gist I got from the flick through I managed to get. Anyway, these four guys are kind of weird looking and definitely not the run-of-the-mill henchmen hoodlums that you normally see, certainly in a penguin crew. So if you're looking for some more colour to add in a bit of dash to your penguin crew, these are the guys to go for, and they do have a lot of great individuality about them. So let's start with the biggest chap here. So look at his model. This is Mr. Toxic. They have some awful names, incidentally. Just try and focus. Camera. There you go. You can see the details really well actualized on his chest. Not so much on his face, but he has no detail on his face. He has a domed helmet, which is going to be a right pain in the butt to paint on, because I've got to do a skull and crossbones on that. I think it's even meant to be inside the helmet as well. So how you're meant to paint that, I don't know. But hey, I'm just going to do it on the outside and hope no one minds. Yeah. He's actually, again, standard superhero stroke supervillain pose, very well actualized on a small base as well. So there you go, with a nice cape. Everyone loves a cape, and there he is. No filling required on this model, no filling required on any of these, as you will see as we go along. Let's carry on. This is Hypnotic. The pose they got for this guy is really good. Come on, there we are. And yes, definitely relatively reasonably dressed, sensibly dressed young man here, with his lovely scarf and his hip. He's obviously working his brain magics on someone with that pose. And yeah, there's not much to say about this one particularly, except he does look very much like he would in the comic, and so you can't ask for more than that. Here we go, the Imperceptible Man, the Invisible Man, basically, and yeah, really well done. Just trying to get decent angles so you can see his head, you know, all the spaces you'd be able to see his skin, he's not there, and they managed to do it pretty well. You know, he otherwise is a guy in street clothes, so oddly enough, despite the fact that it's an invisible man, there's not much to talk about. No, but the join for the glasses onto the neck at the back is kind of finicky, but I got there in the end, and it's not going anywhere now. That's the benefits of this brand of resin. Once it's glued, it tends to stay, and yeah, otherwise it was a really simple build, very little to get worried about. And finally, this is my favourite name, if nothing else, is Mr. Combustible, who looks awesome. Look at that, coat and tails. For some reason he has some sort of light bulb for a head. I don't know his specials or anything like that, but yeah, I love this model, really do. Really cool, great swaggering pose as well, really like him. What a trooper. And there he is. Yeah, great, super easy build. Literally, I think it's just one arm that needed to go on, everything else was done for me, and yeah, lovely. Right, so let's have a look at what these people actually do, and let's start in the same let's start in the same order that I went through them before. So Mr. Toxic, right, he is a free agent. He is the only free agent in amongst this lot. So all the others are henchmen. So you will be able to take the contents of this box all in the same crew. You don't have to pick and choose, which is a good thing. He's 50 points. So much like Signal Man earlier, only 200 funding. Pretty much got identical stats to Signal Man as well. So another relatively cheap 4-4 attack and defense here for for your points. So on that alone, he's probably good. He's probably a considered purchase. Many versions of Penguin have the charismatic rule as well, which enables you to take multiple free agents as well, so taking this guy might not stop you from taking that dead shot you also want to take, you know. But it's worth mentioning that, you know, some Penguin crews won't be able to take this guy as well as a more, what's the word, exciting free agent. But, you know, there we are. For attacks, this guy does Radio Wave, which is an expansive blood damage, which is kind of unusual in this game, which has a whole bunch of rules. Acid and Caustic and Beam pretty much means your opponent is taking that 1 point of blood damage if they're caught under that template, generally speaking, you know. And yeah, that's kind of handy. Again, you'd use that if your opponent's really bunched up and you get the, you know, but otherwise you'll be wanting to punch him most likely, because his criminal, which fits in with some of the keywords on some of the Penguin cards. He's got a bunch of special actions, reinforced gloves there. So at baseline, his unarmed attacks are doing double stun, which really ties in nicely with the 4 attack to make him a dangerous to anyone who's not a high level boss, really. But yes, Deadly Strike, Electric Storm and Energy Absorption are all special actions which he'll be choosing one of those to use before he goes in and starts punching people. And Electric Storm's one I've seen before, where you basically center the template over him and models can get stunned, so that's cool. I really like Electric Storm, not many other people do. Deadly Strike he can use if he wants to go for broke, and if he gets that casualty he kills the model he's attacking. That's very that's very go for broke, you know. If you think you really need to kill someone and you got one shot, this is it. Don't lose your chance to blow, you know. And finally, energy absorption is more likely to be the one, I'll say, because you'll probably see, because what it does is, for one special, all damage inflicted by this model melee inflicts blood instead of stun. So you factor in he's doing with his reinforced gloves, he's doing 2 points of blood damage per hit instead of stun. Ooh, that's bad. I don't like the sound of that much. Plus, of course, for every time he does hit someone, he can heal himself a little bit as well. So I think Mr. Toxic's a pretty good guy for 50 points. I stand to be corrected. He doesn't have much in the way of defensive options, have to be honest. You know, if you concentrate, you know, an opponent who's canny and concentrates on him before he gets in will be able to take him down probably, but he's 50 points, so you're not losing everything. And, you know, the threat of having him on the board is scary enough. Right, so there's your punchy part of this little team here, shall we say. Hypnotic is a henchman, 30 points, so this is a cheaper guy. His stats are, well, commensurate of someone who's actually a little bit less expensive than he is. So he's got very bad stats for fisticuffs, shall we say. That attack of 2 is basically negligible, but hey, no weapons either, so we're hoping it's all in this traits, and it is. He's a criminal again. He's got It's Mine, which if he's standing next to an objective, next to a suspect marker of yours, the opponent can't pick it up, so he can't. So it stops opponents from messing with your objectives if you're nearby. But Confusion and Hypnotic Radio Waves is what it's called. Hypnotic Radio Waves, there you go, are what you're going to be taking him for, because Confusion is basically it's a special action. You can try and make your opponent lose attack and defense for the turn. That's really useful and means they can't do special actions, so potentially you can hobble opponent's big hitter before they get a go. But Hypnotic Radio Waves is quite useful. An enemy henchman, not a vehicle, within 5 inches of line of sight, actually you can potentially hypnotize them, and that will mean if they fail their willpower check, then you get to take 2 actions with that henchman. And there's some henchmen out there now who've got some badass rules now, so being able to hypnotize people for 30 points is a scary prospect. 5-inch range, so if he fails to do that, he's probably going to get flattened by whatever he tried to hypnotize, but he's 30 points, you know. End of the day, he's still a henchman, does all the usual henchman things like be inspired and play some suspects and score points for you that way, so there you go. Next one. If you want to mess around with objectives though and suspect markers, the Imperceptible Man may be the guy you want to go to. Another henchman at 30 points, so again, stats straight out of the henchman playbook there, nothing to write home about really, and no weapons either. So this guy is basically, well, he basically trades on being very difficult to pay attention to. So he's got all the usual. So sneak attack is ignore that. He's not got any weapons. Thief, though, combined with sneak attack, could be useful. Thief means if he does actually hit someone in close combat, you can steal an opponent's objective card and put it out of the game for a while. That's useful. Concealment and Don't Mind Me is where his real points are going. And concealment is the special action, which means he can't be seen unless opponents are in contact with him, which is, well, basically means they can't attack him, really. But yeah, there you go. There's the rules if you want to pause the video and read it. It basically means that he's not going to be being attacked. And Don't Mind Me means even if he does get attacked in close combat, he can make free efforts up to his effort limit. And so yeah, it gets free efforts, so it doesn't have to take stun damage to make efforts until he actually makes an attack action. And why would you make an attack action, hey, in these circumstances? So what this guy will be doing is he will be completing your objectives and not being offensive towards the enemy so as to make the best of his defensive bonuses. Penguin has a lot of objective cards which rely on you moving objective markers around the board, and this is your guy who'll be doing it for you. Okay, and yeah, that's it basically. For 30 points you got the rest of your crew out doing offensive things, and there you are. And finally, Mr. Combustible here, 26 points as a henchman. So he's the cheapest of the bunch, and boy does it suit, because he, again, stats nothing remarkable about his stat line. His Cane's pretty good though for double blood, although yeah, sharp, that's it, just sharp for re-rolling the crappy 5-up strength die. But so he's not a hitter either, and his traits actually I think make him worse, so that's even funnier. So yeah, he's always illuminated because he's got a light bulb head, so enemies can see him from any distance across the board. No need to worry about the night rules. He's got take cover, which can buff your opponent, your own henchman. It's quite useful really, but I don't think it's really, it's not the focus of this model's use. And explosive sense means that he can forewarn his friends about incoming blast templates. But given the relative lack of blast templates in this game, I don't know if he's altogether that useful really. But he's 26 points for someone who looks as dapper as that. I will be taking this man when I get the chance because I think he rocks. If that bit of swag is definitely going into my crews at some point. So there you go. I mean, and he's roughly the same cost as any of your other useless henchmen anyway. So yeah. Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed this little rundown of what the models do and what they look like. I'm going to shoot off now. I hope you enjoyed it. Please let me know in the comments below if I missed anything, if there's anything that you think these models can do that I might have missed off, or anything I just got wrong. Okay, I'm Shield Wall 100. I hope to see you for some actual games at some point in the future on my channel, and yes, we'll speak soon. You take care, guys. Bye bye.